Have you considered speedrunning Time Crisis 2? Personally, one of my favourite games of all time. If you have, then you've stumbled across the correct video. Welcome to Practice Run, a brand new series I'm starting here on YouTube where I'm going to break down step by step how you can get in to both challenge runs and speed runs that I commit to over on Twitch, to help you get introduced to them and even incentivize you to try it yourself. And before we get started, allow me to quickly say that yes, all the footage you're watching in the background comes straight from my live streams over on Twitch, where I stream every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday with challenge runs that I do on the regular and rotate between. The footage you're watching now was during Light Gun Legacy Month, where we had an entire month dedicated to live streaming light gun games, one of my personal favourite genres of all time, and we decided to speedrun both Time Crisis 1 and Time Crisis 2, which actually inspired this series in the first place, to hopefully get you interested in either speedrunning games or trying out different challenge runs of some of the best games out there. So if you're interested in following the action over on Twitch, be sure to check out the links in the description below. And whilst you're down there, why don't you consider subscribing, liking the video, and preparing a comment if you have any questions or any thoughts in the video as we go ahead. So when speedrunning Time Crisis 2, there are many different categories, and if you go to speedruns.com, you will see that the many categories can be a little bit scary at first. But why am I introducing you to the series? Simple as, I am the current only and #1 runner of the Time Crisis 2 speedrunning tables of the emulated run, aka running Time Crisis 2 on a PS2 emulator using only a controller and no GunCon support. So I'm mostly using this series to hopefully incentivize more people to try an emulated version of Time Crisis 2 in speedrunning, to hopefully get that category booming, because it's lonely being at the top. So during this first part of helping you get into Time Crisis 2 speedrunning, we're going to be going over the basics, everything you will need to know prior to getting deep into your speedrunning. First things first, some requirements of what you will need. You will need either an emulator for the game itself. I would personally recommend PCSX2 on your PC. Or you will require the hardware to be able to run the game if you are running the hardware versions, this being the PlayStation 2 or an actual arcade cabinet. Next, you will need access to a ROM if you are running the emulated version. I will not be supplying links to either PCSX2 or ROMs during this video, nor will I be sharing any hints, tips or tricks as how to optimize your settings to best run the game. All I can say, if you are experiencing difficulties, please drop me a comment below if you are, and I'll see if I can help you out, or come on over to the Discord server and chat to me directly. After getting your ROM, you will also need your controller of choice, either being a basic controller or a GunCon if you are running things on the PS2 hardware or via arcade cabinets. In order to run the games also, you will need to make sure that your game is on default settings. You can know if your game is on default settings if you need to push in the pedal button in order to reload, and you have only 4 lives when you begin the game. In order to run in these categories also, you must have the game set on very hard mode. This can be changed in the options menu, and you do not need to unlock it. It is available from the very beginning of the game. Now, if you are already a runner of Time Crisis 2, or you want to speedrun the game but make things a little bit different, here are some alternate rule sets that are also available for running the game. Auto ammo. In order to unlock the auto ammo function within the game, you need to make sure you just beat story mode twice. You can use as many continues as you need to, but you do need to beat it twice to get auto ammo. Auto ammo will basically turn your regular gun into a machine gun with 20 bullets in the magazine. Infinite ammo. In order to gain access to infinite ammo, you simply need to beat the story with auto ammo once. Infinite ammo does work completely different to auto. While auto turns your gun into a machine gun with 20 bullets in the chamber, infinite ammo is literally as it says on the tin. It gives you infinite ammo, but for your base handgun. So instead of your base handgun only having 9 shots at the start, you now have infinite ammo and can effectively stay out of cover for the entirety of the game, only needing to duck behind cover if you're dodging crisis flashes. Wide ammo. To unlock wide ammo, you simply need to beat the story with infinite ammo, and then you have it actively available. Wide ammo changes your 9 bullets in your gun magazine into shotgun rounds that literally fire like a shotgun and, as the name suggests, have a wider radius. Mirror mode. In order to unlock mirror mode, you must complete the story mode on any difficulty with no continues. Mirror mode does exactly what you think it does. It flips the game over like a mirror, so now everything is the reverse of what you are led to believe. This is a very challenging mode if you're very used to speedrunning the game in the base form, so I would only suggest mirror mode if you are experienced with speedrunning Time Crisis 2, or if you're brand new and you genuinely, after completing the story once with no continues, want to mix things up right off the bat. Now, although these next options are not official speedrun categories, they are wacky speedrunning options that I would personally recommend if you want to do something a little bit silly with Time Crisis 2 speedrunning. Also, if you try these out at home and want to share them with me, share them on my social media channels and I will give you a huge shout. Wacky speedrun categories include death percent, lose all 4 lives as fast as you possibly can, and a special category I like to call LPG percent, or lamppost guy percent, where the trick to this is to get to what we call lamppost guy in area 1-2 as fast as you can. Time stops when lamppost guy is shot. And don't worry, when we break down stage 1 in the next video of this series, I will help you identify who is lamppost guy. Also, if you're interested, Lamppost Guy merch is now available on my merch store, link below in the description. With all the running options out of the way, let's get into some of the technical elements of Time Crisis 2 you may want to know if you want to get into it. The game itself is split into 3 stages and then 3 areas themselves. When we get to referring to the stages one by one in separate videos, I will be referring to these areas as 1-1, 1-2 and 1-3, etc. RNG elements are prevalent inside the game and include elements such as enemy locations and the variations of enemies that can pop up on certain screens, as well as their chance to commit to a crisis flash. But what is a crisis flash? A crisis flash, or a red shot as other people prefer to call them, is a red shot fired by an enemy directed at you. If this red shot does hit you, it is a guaranteed -1 to your life total. For the sake of the majority of me explaining the Time Crisis 2 running, you may see me refer to crisis flashes simply as CFs. Time Crisis 2 does actually allow you to choose what route you take on certain stages of the game. All you need to do in order to achieve this is to either shoot orange enemies that pop up in certain locations, or complete very specific criteria. The most important bonus routes of the game, and are extremely important if you want to get on the higher ends of the speedrunning categories, are as follows. Stage 1-2. Shoot the hat off of Jakov, also known as Hack Guy, every time he shows up on screen during this area. There are 4 times in total in 1-2 that you will need to do this. Stage 2-2. Shoot the green enemies when you are looking from one train to the other. This is very hard as the train you're looking at does move quite fast and you have a very small window of opportunity to shoot both green enemies. If you get this, you will then be also rewarded by having the bonus route for 3-1, where it's a requirement to get the bonus route in 2-2 and beat the boss at the end of stage 2 itself. Your basic gun in the game only has 9 shots in the chamber, and after every 9 shots you will need to reload. In order to reload, you release the pedal button, which if you're using controller like in my category, will be defaulted to L1 and R1, and then you simply push the pedal in order to get back up and begin shooting once again. Now, if you are using a controller in the game, you may think that the cursor speed is a little bit slow when it comes to getting from one side of the screen to the other. You'll be happy to know that there is a way to speed up your cursor speed without using hacks, and is a default function of the game as well, so is perfectly legal when speedrunning Time Crisis 2 on either PS2 or emulator. All you have to do is simply push down either L2 or R2 whilst moving around your cursor. You will notice that your cursor speed increases dramatically. This can be very erratic and can affect your accuracy, however, so you may want to train a little bit with this before you start using it all the time. Also, if you are using a controller, did you know that every single face button on the PlayStation 2 controller or equivalent all count as shooting buttons? That's right. So if you're in a situation where you're against a boss or a static enemy that takes multiple shots in order to take down, you can do a circular motion using your fingers or your thumb on the face buttons themselves to expunge all 9 shots incredibly fast, doing the maximum amount of damage you can in a single burst. This literally can make some areas a joke, especially the end boss of 2-3, where you can potentially end 2-3 in under a minute during this speedrun. With those important elements out of the way that you may want to know about, now let's break down enemies that you will be coming across in Time Crisis 2. You can tell the differences of these enemies because they are all color coordinated, their colors corresponding with what they do in the game. First we have the blue enemies. Blue enemies are the most common in the game and have the lowest chance to fire crisis flashes. Then you have white enemies. These are uncommon, but have a slightly higher chance to hit you with a crisis flash in comparison to blue enemies. Red enemies are very dangerous and should be avoided whenever possible or prioritized when they pop up on screen. Why? Because if they shoot you on their first or second shot, they are the most likely to hit you with a crisis flash on those first 2 shots. Even after those first 2 shots, if you avoid them and you don't shoot them for a while, they have a very high chance to shoot you again with another CF. Then you have the green enemies, or what I prefer to call them, the army enemies. The army enemies are split into 2 different types. You have the army machine gun enemy that fires large amounts of rounds at you with a machine gun with a high rate of hitting you with a crisis flash. The other alternative I call army grenadiers. These are guys in the same uniform that throw grenades at you that can be shot in mid-air whilst they're flying through. However, if a grenade does hit you, that is a guaranteed -1 life. Sometimes the grenadiers, after throwing a single grenade or a certain amount of grenades, may switch to a standard firearm similar to white enemies and have a similar CF rate to white enemies also. Then you have the real green enemies, or what should be known as bonus enemies. These enemies are very uncommon and normally put into hard to shoot locations away from the gunfights themselves. Shooting them grants you additional bonus points in the game, and as far as what I've seen in every version of the game I've played for the years that I played Time Crisis 2, I have never seen a single one of these bonus enemies ever fire a CF. One enemy variation you will also come across that's not necessarily color coded are what I like to define as knife guys. Knife guys literally do as they are named. They either throw knives at you or use knives at close range to hit you at melee range. A knife is always a guaranteed CF, so you want to make sure you're either shooting those guys or dodging their knives as they're being thrown at you. If he swings for a melee attack, you can dodge out of the way and it's pretty darn telegraphable, so it's very easy to dodge. However, if it does hit you, there's also a guaranteed -1 life. There is a variation of the knife guy that I call scubas, and you only ever encounter 3 scubas during the events of stage 1-3. These scubas are literally, as I say, they are scuba divers that pop out of the water as you are driving around on the boats that you have to shoot. The placement of these scubas are going to be different depending on whether you got the bonus route in stage 1-2 or not, but I will identify that when we go on to the next video. The final enemy to keep out on are orange enemies. Orange enemies have a slightly higher chance to CF in comparison to blues, and they don't pop up very often at all. But Depending on who you shoot first, because normally orange enemies come in twos, determines which route you will be taking in the area you're in or the next area you're about to enter. Most of these routes, when we get to breaking down the stages, will be split between left and right route, and I will identify which one of these routes are deemed as the faster route. Next we have the boss fights. At the end of every single stage or during every single stage, you will encounter bosses, and these bosses are way harder to fight than your regular enemies, with one caveat. Enemies take single shots in order to defeat. The bosses can take multiple shots in order to both stagger and defeat properly, so keep that in mind. The first boss you'll encounter is Jakov Kiniski, or as I popularly know him by, Hat Guy. You fight him throughout stage 1 and he has a high chance to fire CFs with his machine gun. The final part of stage 1, also known as 1-3, features him firing at you on a speedboat whilst you're chasing after him also on boats. Boss number 2 is Buff Bryant, or whom I've popularly called Julius on live streams. If you want to know why I called him Julius, personally I have no idea. I thought his name was Julius for the longest time, but I was wrong. So I've just put his alternate name here in case you want to use it. Buff is only fought as a boss fight in stage 2-3 and has 3 breakdownable phases. Phase 1 is his turret phase, where he is guaranteed to fire you with crisis flashes until he changes targets. A missile phase, where he literally picks up a giant missile and uses it as an actual whacking cane against you. And finally, the chopper or copter phase, where he has a very high chance of firing at you with CFs, and also becomes a mobile target, which may be a little bit hard to hit, but is genuinely the easiest boss in this game by far. Third, we have the staple of the series and one of my favourite villains of all time in video games, Wild Dog. You begin fighting Wild Dog during stage 3-1. He has a very high chance to hit you with a CF. The boss himself carries a handgun and has an arm-mounted machine gun. He has 3 different phases during 3-1 and then joins another boss at the beginning of 3-2. That boss being the main boss and endgame boss of Time Crisis 2, Ernesto Diaz, or whom I also reference as Satellite. Ernesto first shows up in 3-2 fighting alongside Wild Dog and uses a missile launcher against you that is a guaranteed CF upon firing at you. Phase 2 of the Ernesto fight takes you into 3-3, where he starts using Christy, a female character in the story of the game, as a meat shield, and shooting Christy does not give you a -1 to life, but does lower your point total. At the final area of 3-3, he will mount a satellite. This satellite has 4 sets of rocket launchers and 2 lasers, which are guaranteed CFs on hit. This boss fight in itself has 3 different phases also, which will break down when we come to breaking down stage 3 as a total later down the line. And last but not least, before we end this video, I need to give you a personal warning. If you are going to use that shot circling technique that I told you about earlier, if you're using a controller for either the PS2 version or the emulated version of the run, I want to warn you about finger and thumb pains when using that technique. I only used that technique for a short period of time during my running of Time Crisis 2, but when I did, after using it again and again and again on failed runs, it was really starting to hurt my thumb, my finger, and even parts of my hand in general. I thought I would at least give you a warning now about that before we end, in case you're a little bit iffy when it comes to using certain techniques that take a lot out of your hands. Use it sparingly at first, see if you can take it with muscle memory, and only use it during certain times, which I will tell you about once we start breaking down the stages in later videos. And those are all the basics you need to know when running Time Crisis 2 as a speedrun. If you have any more techniques that you want to share with people, or if you want to post any comments on any worries or woes or any attempts you've made where you might not be necessarily doing something right, by all means, post your comments down below. I will answer as many questions as I can and attempt to respond to every single comment that pops up. If you do start running Time Crisis 2, however, please let me know either in the comments or hit me up on my social media channels, especially on Twitter, using the hashtag #PracticeRun. If you hit me up that way, I will definitely try to show you off in a video later down the line to promote all the other people that are joining me in speedrunning Time Crisis 2. Also, if you start speedrunning Time Crisis 2 on my category, where you're emulating the speedrun with controller only, please let me know also using hashtag #PracticeRun, because if you get onto the leaderboard, hell yeah, I want to promote that, and I want to see who's challenging me for that #1 spot. In the next video, I will be breaking down in its entirety Stage 1. So if you're interested and cannot wait for that one, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and you look out for when the next video will be coming out. I will work on it and release it as soon as I possibly can. In the meantime, I hope you have fun beginning your speedrunning journey in Time Crisis 2, and I will see you next time on another edition of Practice Run. In the meantime, stay explosive, and I will see you next time.